But first, a bizarre twist tonight in a triple death investigation that spans from Avenue B in Billings to West Yellowstone and now back to Avenue B. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, Billings police are now investigating the suspicious death of another woman found dead in a home this morning, just 9 blocks away from last week's murder scene. As Q2's Andrea Lutz reports, it's the home of a woman accused in the death of her mother just 5 days earlier.
Billings police are investigating the circumstances surrounding yet another death here on Avenue B. And while the cause of the death is not quite known, what is known is that this death is related to 3 recent others.
We are looking at the motive. We're looking at the chain of events.
Billings officers were sent to 28-year-old Erica Miller's home shortly after 1 a.m. A family member reporting the body of an unidentified woman was found inside.
The whole investigation at this point is fact-finding, gathering.
Miller was interviewed by me back in March of 2020 concerning a COVID-19 testing story. Police say this latest death at her home adds to an already expansive investigation.
Officers were out at the residence during the initial stages off like the 15th and 16th, and they were unable to make contact with anybody. Since then, family has been in the residence multiple times prior to even last night.
Just days earlier, Miller's mother, Roxanne Watson, was murdered at her home, also on Avenue B. Police say Miller and her boyfriend, Henry Porter, are suspects in that murder.
There's nothing to indicate that there's other victims at this point.
The 2 died in an apparent murder-suicide following a police chase in Gallatin County. And Woolley says even though no suspects so far mean no charges, a comprehensive investigation will still have to follow.
The case will still be reviewed by the county attorney's office, so there could be some closure for the public.
In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Thanks so much, Andrea. By law, because there's a matter of death and the coroner is involved, every death that meets a certain criteria is deemed criminal until established otherwise. Officials say this investigation could take as much as a year to complete. Well, a wreck on Highway 3 near Zimmerman Park caused a huge commotion and then a lull in traffic this afternoon. A Billings resident told us he heard the accident near Zimmerman, the roundabout in that area, around 3 o'clock this afternoon. When he went outside, he noticed a car wrecked on the berm facing north. Now, police activity followed with several cruisers converging near the wreck and Zimmerman Park. Now, this is all the information we have on this incident at this hour. Continue to follow us on air and online as more develops. Well, one day after a Billings woman was shot in the head as bullets pierced her doorway, the suspect remains on the loose. But tonight, Billings police tell us they do not believe the suspect is a threat to the rest of the public. Billings Police Chief Rich St. John tells Q2 the investigation is ongoing into yesterday's attack at an apartment complex on the 4100 block of King Avenue East. Multiple shots were fired through the door of one of the units just after noon, and a 45-year-old woman was hit in the head. St. John says the investigation so far is leading detectives to believe the victim and the suspect were acquainted. The victim remains in the hospital tonight. No word on her condition. Well, a Billings man charged with shooting and killing another man at an after-hours party in late December and then fleeing to Chicago pleads not guilty. Today, 28-year-old Lorenzo Harris pleaded not guilty to felony deliberate homicide and tampering with evidence in the December 27th murder of 30-year-old James Williams. Now, court documents state Harris, also known as Zoe, and the victim were both at Shooter's Bar on the night of December 26th. After the bars closed, a woman and the victim showed up at Harris's mother's house at 2808 3rd Avenue South. Now, witnesses say Harris and Williams got into a fight. Harris shot Williams, then removed his white puffy coat covered in blood and then fled the scene. Authorities located Harris in Chicago in January. Now, court documents also show 3 images of Harris during a video call from the jail holding up a sign with words, "Tell Vel, get more than 4 people to say I wasn't here at that time. Everybody knew I was on the road back to Chicago with Alyssa and my kids by 12 a.m. Now, the judge set Harris's bond today at $1 million. The Montana Democratic Party is now suing over 2 bills tightening rules for voters across our state. This after Governor Greg Gianforte signed them into law just yesterday. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian tells us what they're challenging.
Montana Democrats say the two bills they're challenging put unnecessary burdens on the ability to vote, especially for students, older voters, the disabled, and Native Americans. And they say the state hasn't provided enough justification for them. The state Democratic Party filed suit against Secretary of State Christy Jacobson, a Republican, in Yellowstone County District Court. They're asking the court to stop her from enforcing House Bill 176 and Senate Bill 169. The party's executive director, Sandy Luckey, said, quote, "Fair access to the ballot box for all eligible voters, whether they are Republicans, Democrats, or independents, is essential to the Montana way of life. We will continue to hold accountable any leader who attacks our democratic institutions." House Bill 176 would remove the option for voters to register on Election Day. Late registration would be closed at noon the day before an election. Sponsor Sharon Grief, a Republican representative from Florence, said it would make elections more efficient and reduce long lines at election offices. Senate Bill 169 would more tightly define what type of ID a voter in Montana has to show. It would specifically require additional proof of residency for voters showing student IDs. Republican Senator Mike Cuff of Eureka sponsored the bill and said it was a reasonable way to ensure only Montana residents are voting. The Democrats' complaint argues there's no evidence the state's current laws were vulnerable to voter fraud, and that the new limitations are only going to make it harder for people to vote. Governor Gianforte signed both of these bills into law on Monday, saying they would help ensure the continued integrity of Montana's elections for years to come. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Thanks, Jonathan. Now, in recent years, generally between 1% and 2% of votes in Montana have been cast by people registering on Election Day. Well, today, lawmakers in Helena advanced a pair of bills that both cut Montana's top state income tax rate. And the plan for now is to pass them both, but have them take effect on staggered dates. Republican members of the House Taxation Committee approved both bills this morning, sending them to the full House for a debate and a vote later this week. Now, both are sponsored by State Senator Greg Hertz, a Republican from Polson. One bill drops the top income tax rate from 6.9% to 6.7% and will cost the state treasury about $30 million a year. Now, if that passes, it would take effect in 2022. The other drops the top rate to 6.5%, but it also gets rid of 24 tax deductions and credits that would drop thousands of low-income people off the state income tax rolls entirely. It's a price tag that comes in around $40 million a year. Now, Hertz says the plan is to have this change take effect in 2024 or possibly sooner, depending on what the next legislature wants to do. Democrats on the committee voted against the bills. They say the second one actually raises taxes on some earners and is an extensive overhaul that hasn't been properly vetted. Well, now turning to Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh for a first look at weather. Ed, we've been looking at snowstorms, just little ones here and there, and they're pretty.
They are very pretty, and we thank our viewers for sending us some of those great pictures, too. Let's start out with this one from Larry Edwards. This was the scene yesterday morning right outside his home. By the afternoon, it had totally changed back into a spring scene all over again. Meanwhile, for the higher elevations, Rick shared this one from around Red Lodge Mountain. 17 inches of new snow made for great weather for them to go out snowshoeing and enjoy a lot of the winter recreation. And also some video coming in as well as a couple of pronghorn here in northern Wyoming. If you have pictures to share, you can always download our free app. Make sure that you send us the photos, and you can also send us information about storm reports and videos as well. Also, weather@ktvq.com is a great email address to get a hold of all of us. Back with the forecast details in a little bit.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, a local company will lend a helping hand to graduating seniors who are inspired to carry on the family tradition of farming and learning more about agriculture. Q2's Brandon Warren brings us the story and the passion behind it.
This year, Town & Country Supply Association gave out $4,000 in scholarships to local high school students.
It's a program that the Board of Directors developed back in 2010. They basically felt that we needed to promote agriculture.
There are some requirements for these scholarships that helps the Board of Directors, who choose the recipients, narrow the field.
Their parents have to be a customer of Town & Country Supply, and it's designed for people going into the agricultural field of study.
The number of scholarships given is not always set in stone and can be changed if they feel that there are enough qualified applicants.
We typically try to set aside $3,000, so 3 $1,000 scholarships. Throughout this whole thing, we've given out 41 different scholarships, basically starting in 2011, and for over $33,000.
The scholarship means a lot to this year's recipients.
I'm studying animal science and ag business, and then I'm also going to rodeo for them as well.
It's really nice to know that they're putting their money back into my future for me to go to college.
Town and Country plans to keep the scholarships going in the future.
It's just a nice program to be able to give back to these kids. I wish we could give a little bit more, and maybe in the future we will.
In Laurel, Brandon Warren, MTN News.
Thanks, Brandon. Now, the 4 scholarship recipients will all start at either 2- or 4-year universities this fall. Well, up next on tonight's MTN 530 News here on Q2 and Health Watch, we take a deep dive to learn about the benefits of underwater therapy for our veterans.
Hi everybody, Scott Breen here. Coming up in sports, Dawson Community College basketball men playing their first ever junior college national tournament. Just a few minutes from now, I'll show you how it ends.